Hi everyone, uh, good afternoon. So I think Rahul, so we have a very good panel here from all the different sector, and I'm pretty sure everyone is going to like this session. And when you go out, we'll go out with a lot of informations about what is happening, what are the future of retail in India. So Rahul have some opening address to do, and then we'll start the session. Rahul, over to you.
Thank you. Okay, so do you mind if I stand? Perfect. And I think the lady already alluded to the fact that let's not talk too much. There has got to be time for questions and all, right? So I will try and encapsulate this quickly. How many of you have heard of ONDC? How many of you know about ONDC? Kind of, sort of? All right. So let me try and give you a very quick view of what is ONDC, right? So firstly, why is ONDC there? What is the perspective of ONDC? Start point. How many of you know what is the percentage of Indians actually using digital commerce? Any ideas? Less than 6%. How many sellers are there in India, and how many of those, whether it is MSME, etc., are actually online? How many of them, percentage-wise? Less than 1%, right? So if you look at the overall scope that is there, it is massive. Where will we go to? ONDC is here to ensure that everything that is required for digital commerce is possible to at least 75% of India, right? We were just discussing something else outside also, and what we also realized was that it isn't just that what we see as digital commerce is what is there by the platforms, but that is not what is all commerce. That is the B2C side of things. But for the B2C side of things to work, the entire component of B2B requires to be there in force. The classic analogy would be you look at a swan on a lake and it looks really serene. That part is the B2C side, but you don't see the legs flapping around under the water. Like, that is the B2B side. That is how supply chains are, etc., working. Now, now to tell you what is ONDC and what is not ONDC. Can you put your hands together like this? That is a platform. That is what all of us have grown up, and that is part of a DNA structure now. How many of you bought something from any of the platforms in the last 30 days, 7 days? Everybody has, right? Including our children. And much to our chagrin, because everybody is doing that. By the way, do you know what is the margins that some of these platforms are taking away? There's a Bloomberg report which came out a couple of days back. Approximately 50% of the money is taken away by these platforms. Now, with your hands together, left side is where you would have gone to as a buyer to say, I want to put in a request and I'm looking for an iPhone or glasses or something like that. The right side is where they have contractual obligations with these certain sellers, whether they're MSME or they're large, right? And those contractual obligations are terms and conditions, margins, the OPEX cost associated with making sure that you're on multiple platforms so that you're going to be visible. All those different elements come into picture. And as somebody else was also saying a couple of minutes back, there is this disintermediation risk also at play, which means your product starts doing really well on the platform. Next thing you know, they've white labeled it and your margins and your product is kind of gone. You're more or less finished. From a platform perspective, they really don't care about whether 5 sellers go out of the whack or not, because they know there are 10 more coming in. All of that is there, right? So this would have been a standard platform. What is ONDC? We're not here to replace anyone. We're not here to kill anyone. As I said, we're going to expand the market. From where they've been at 6%, we will take it down to 75% of India. ONDC is not a front end or a back end. What we do in its simplistic form is you will still go to the front end, which is whether it is an Airtel application, or it is IDFC Bank, or it is Paytm, or it is PhonePe, right? From where it gets sent to the ONDC gateway, please keep in mind, ONDC gateway. The gateway further sends it to various seller-side applications, right? Remember, we just broke it up. Seller-side applications, whether it is SignCatch or it is GoFrugal, etc. The sellers behind them are now responding back to your response, to your question for a phone or glasses, etc. You as a customer now have more choices, more options. When you decide what is a product you want to buy and it is put in your cart, etc. And when I'm saying cart, please keep in mind this is not only B2C, it is also B2B, which means that whether you're buying 5 laptops for your family or you're buying 100 laptops for your organization, all of these are possible on the ONDC network. Okay? Or you're buying something from a small farmer, it is possible. Okay? Now, all that is done, so the product flow happens. Again, ONDC is out of the picture because ONDC is only there to enable search and discovery. The product flows happen. There is a problem, you set up a return. Again, over the network. All the communication layer of how that is supposed to happen is all there. You want a cancellation, you want a return, you want a replacement. All of those factored out, already in play. Okay? Next step. You say, yeah, but I got the product, but it was broken, nobody fixed it. We've also figured out an entire mechanism for issue and grievance management. Okay? How does money flow take place? As a matter of fact, we also have somebody here from Access, and by the way, they've been one of the first few banks who've opened up nodal-like accounts. The idea for setting up nodal-like accounts was how do we build trust in the network? Right now, the reason why we were calling any of the platforms was we thought our money was safe. But in this scenario, now with the money coming in, right, it is in the nodal-like account, which means it is factored out, it is safe, because now you can't just go pull out that money, pay your salaries, and that transaction would fail. That has also been done. So the money flows based on a standard banking mechanism. There is a settlement agency, there are recon service providers, etc. Money flows also taken care of. So we figured out issue and grievances, we figured out payments, we figured out products moving. Very quick thing also. We are not looking at just, as I said, just like food and beverages and grocery. That is where we started. Do you know how many cities? So at this point in time, beta testing is going on in Meerut and Bangalore. Other than that, I think last count or last check, orders are being placed across over 150 cities. And mobility is also live. Right? In the next couple of weeks, you will find every other sector also going live, including agriculture. B2B is just another nuance to a B2C transaction, but that is all going live very, very quickly. Okay? Agriculture, yes. Food and beverage is already done. Consumer electronics, fashion and footwear, all yes. Okay? So each one of these transactions will carry on. Other sectors will keep getting added. Any one of you uses Paytm? Open up Paytm right now. Open it up right now. Okay? And just in the search bar, top part of it, just type in ONDC. You'll see something popping up. Please go ahead and order. Check it out. Major thing I want to leave with you is that all of us have been part of that top 6%, which means we all think that the services associated with being in the top 6% is what everybody wants. All of us are sitting in a 5-star hotel. All of us are used to drinking tea in 5-star hotels, which means you're used to paying 500 rupees for a cup of tea. But does that mean that tea is not sold in a 3-star, 2-star, 1-star hotel? Or that tea is not sold on the street? बिकता है ना? तो अगर आप 500 रुपए की अगर चाय खरीदोगे और बोलोगे ये मेरे को अच्छी नहीं लगी, वो वापस चुपचाप ले जाएगा, आपके पास सामने दूसरी वाली ले आएगा. पर जब आप पटरी पे जाके आप 10 रुपए की अपनी चाय खरीदोगे, thank you sir. So that does not mean that that service is not required or not wanted. It is still there, it is required. Why put that burden of all types of services on all types of products? So ONDC is here to make sure that even the small, marginalized, underrepresented, etc. seller is on the network. Their product can be sold. Why is it that when you're looking to buy a particular product, it has to come to you from 20 kilometers away? It can come to you from your local shop right outside. And that local shop does not necessarily have to only be a Kirana store. It could be somebody who's selling a Samsonite suitcase right outside. Why not? It is possible. Okay? So, every type of product across different bands for different sets of people, whether B2B or B2C, will all be possible. And not just domestically, we're working on exports also. Right? So I'm going to stop at this. Otherwise, as I said, I will keep going.
Thank you, Rahul. I think you have touched base on what everyone have thought of talking about, right? So, yeah. So let me start with from my right. I have Ms. Kaur, who had the Small and Marginal Farmer Consortium. So, Ms. Kaur, my first question to you is: we have never heard like in e-commerce farmers, right? So, what is this? Where we are going ahead, and what do you see? How these small and marginal farmers, right, can take the advantage of ONDC and get a decent share in the market, and make a total different competition to the organized players. So your thought on this?
So SFAC, the organization which I head, works with only small and marginal farmers. Our main flagship scheme is a scheme to set up 10,000 farmer producer organizations across the country, at least one in every block of the country. So the idea behind an FPO is that you aggregate small marginal farmers, also landless farmers, and when they collectivize, the minimum number in an FPO has to be 300. It's the power of collectivization for both inputs and outputs. When the idea of digital commerce came for them, there was a lot of disbelief. How are they going to, they are all over the country. What is it that digital commerce will bring to them? So my simple answer for this is, digital commerce brings about equitable opportunity. Not equal opportunity, equitable opportunity. So for instance, if we have a wall which is 20 feet high and there are 3 people who want to look over the wall and see a cricket match, 3 feet, 10 feet, and maybe 11 feet, right? So you give them the same stool. Maybe the tallest chap would be able to look across the wall. That is equal opportunity. Equitable opportunity is you give the person only what he needs. And that is where the FPOs have found a solution in ONDC. Somebody may just need market access. Somebody will need support for logistics also. That I cannot get my own stuff couriered. I need a courier service. Someone just needs visibility. This is a platform where they choose which vendor for which service, or is there something which they can do on their own. When we did our first trial with about 20 FPOs only, we did a face-to-face session to help them on board because we were also uncertain about what is the response which we will see from them. So this is a small cute story, so you'll have to excuse me. In Odisha, there's a district called Kandhamal. Has anybody heard of it? Oh, I'm so happy. So Kandhamal has this subdivision called Daringbadi. Daringbadi is forested, it's hilly. It's locally, when in Odisha, we used to call it, it's the Switzerland of Odisha because it gets sleet and snow in the winters. It has wild elephants, it's really cut off from development as we speak. We have a tribal FPO there, a women's FPO, and they have always grown turmeric, ragi, and coffee. These are the 3 crops which they've ever grown, all naturally. They've never used pesticides and they've never used fertilizers. So they were one of our first FPOs to come on the ONDC platform from Daringbadi, and they could not find a logistic partner. There is just no logistic service in the area, so they are doing the delivery themselves. They got 3 orders. And they were so enthralled by where they got the orders from. One came from this state, another. They were all 3 orders from outside Odisha. And they wrote us a long emotional message saying, we got 3 orders, and for each order we had to go to the post office and we had to send it by India Post. And I copied it and I sent to Mr. Shirish Joshi in ONDC, and I just sent it to him, this is the feedback, and he put it up on Facebook, verbatim. And the next week we got a message, we don't know what you did, but we got 8 orders in one day. So that is the power of social media, of ONDC. And after that, we have actively pushed for FPOs to come on digital platform. We spend so much energy and effort in what we wear and what we look like, but we are basically what we eat. So I think if a person values himself or herself, turmeric is not something we buy every day, maybe once a month, once a quarter. But if you had a turmeric like that, authentic from the source, believe me, you cannot go and have another turmeric elsewhere. And it's not just the financial part of it. So these women have learned to plot. With every order, they plot on the map. This came from Maharashtra, and this is where it is on the map of India. They are here, incidentally, in the Adi Mahotsav, which was inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister day before. And yesterday, they were spamming our WhatsApp with, look, even the PM came on our stall. So when you at their stall number 46, and if you go and ask them, they'll tell you, take our product, and if you want to order again, we are on my store. So that is the social aspect of ONDC. That is why with FPOs, we're really investing, and we think it's a good way forward. Thank you.
Yeah, stories like these always inspire everyone, right? And we believe like ONDC is going to change a lot of people, a lot of villagers and businesses whom we never thought of they can be relevant to the e-commerce. Will be seeing a lot of such actions, right? Thank you, Mrs. Kaur. So my next question is to Mr. Sumit. So you are representing the G20, chairing the G20 summit as well, right? So, and as I understand, like you come from the B2B sector, right? So please tell us about like what you see the B2B sector, how they can, take the advantage of ONDC and make. I think Rahul have already given some hints about the B2B. If you can elaborate more on the B2B and how businesses can take advantage of ONDC, because till now most of us has the assumption like ONDC would be more from the B2C, centric only, but a new dimension has came as a B2B. Like if you can enlighten, all the people sitting in this room on the B2B side.
No, thanks. I think B2B is a topic which needs a lot of deliberation. So I'll break the question in 2 parts. One is obviously the aspect of G20, where I, as part of the PhD chamber, have been entrusted with the e-commerce agenda, India's ability to export technology. The second is my company, which is a technology service provider with ONDC, and we are enabling MSMEs to come onto the B2B protocol of ONDC. To explain B2B a little better, I'll tell you about an experience, and this is something which we personally had as a company. 2017-18, I'm sure all of you would have heard a lot about these Kirana development programs, which were being promoted by some of the big boys, including Walmart, Amazon, Jio. Today, we barely hear about those players talking about these, Kirana development, and there were tall claims made around 10 million stores we'll acquire in 2 years, 3 years, but none of them fructified. So while we were working on one of the projects with a fairly large established brand, take the name and say it was Walmart, there were some primary realizations we got as a tech company. The entire wallet share of purchasing the supplies or the procurement in the Kirana space for your Walmart, Metro, Udaan, Amazon, all of them combined was not even 2 to 3%. All these small stores are buying from the general trade ecosystem, the local stockist, the local wholesaler, and the super distributor. Depending on what is your order size, you would buy from one or the other of these players in the ecosystem. Now, when you look at the market, what some of these larger players were doing was they were trying to aggregate as super distributors. So in a nutshell, what they were doing was they were disrupting the traditional way the businesses was being done, which was more than 95%. So models didn't succeed because India was already self-sufficient. We had our own supply chain, we had our own ways of doing business, and for all things equal, you buy from a friend. For all things not equal, you would still buy from a friend. That is classic India, right? So if even if a better rate was being given, how they manage those margins in general trade, that's a mystery in itself. But the players would still buy from somebody they know. So supply chain from an ONDC standpoint, what it does for these unknown faces is 95%. It gives you this component of discoverability. Who is Guptaji out there, who is a wholesaler somewhere in Chhattisgarh, you would know about him. And if he's supplying to an X amount of people through ONDC, where ONDC also has a logistic protocol, he gets a chance to expand his outreach. Right. What tech also does, it also brings in components of probably, the gentleman from Axis Bank will be able to expound a little more on that. Is components of digital data-led lending, right? So how do you grow business? Like for a wholesaler who is providing his goods to small retailers, there is always a component of credit. Now, depending on his capacity, he can only give an X amount of credit to an X amount of people. That means his sales are restricted. But if you have an organized lender which comes into play and bases data, surrogate data, which is available across the supply chain, he says, I'll underwrite this exposure for you. Suddenly the dynamics change, business grows. So that is the power of tech, and that is the power of specifically something like ONDC, where there is no centralization. So you're not saying that a big player is coming and aggregating all these small players. These players are directly onto the network. So when they're directly onto the network, what that does is they decide the prices. It may not be just about pricing. Just before the session started, I was discussing with Maninder. What's unique about India, we as a race, as a people, are very content. So none of us are like, we have to become the next big thing. We borrowed that, for good or for bad, we borrowed that, but generally people are very content. I have this one shop, this is my fixed timing. You come here, you want to buy in this time, I'm happy and I will only cater to this area. But I'm a specialist in that thing. Be it pickles, be it samosas, be it whatever I make. I'm a specialist and I'm content, right? So what ONDC, one of the other things which I think should be highlighted, it will empower specialization, it will empower uniqueness, which is your power, right? So that's the power of, the whole B2B supply chain coming onto ONDC. The other aspect which I would want to highlight is, so one is credit, second is logistics. The third is also the question of discoverability amongst the retailers. Right? A lot of these retailers are looking at comparing prices. Right? They might be buying through an X amount of people, but they may want to, at a certain day, want a particular price. Right? So on ONDC, because it is hyper local, they will get a lot of the other folks in that area as well, who could be giving the same product at a better price, and depending on the relationship or the need of the hour, he can pick and choose one or the other of the players. So I think the best way to put B2B is how Rahul put it. I think India is a country where we see seamless e-commerce, everything happening the consumer side, but the B2B side is where the real magic needs to happen. And we as a company are quite bullish about that. I think ONDC is going to radically change a lot of things. And coming to the second part of your thing, which is exports. Now this is something which again I think all of us need to go a little one lens deeper. Before we talk about exporting, right, as being part of the PhD chamber, which is the largest apex body for MSMEs, export is an agenda. But we also need to know what had been exported to us thus far. So I think one of the biggest things which had been exported to us was the closed loop proprietary way of doing business. How these large marketplaces operate is their only model is destroy the small guy or control the small guy, control margins up to 50%, and if they don't, then you set up your own back-end channels to do the supply, right? Now what India is doing something very interesting, is saying you decide, there's a protocol, if you follow this protocol, all the marketplaces, hopefully all the big guys soon will also be leveraging ONDC to list you. So that way nobody is squeezing you on your profits because you decide your margins, right? There'll be obviously players who would want a certain part of it, who are getting you consumers, but again they will be regulated or disciplined. So that is so as part of exports, I think what we should be exporting is once our MSMEs or our small retailers and wholesalers are digital enough, we should leverage the ONDC stack and take that, global. Let the India's way of doing commerce, the decentralized, Nandan Nilankalni famously said, this is an idea whose time has come, but this is also an idea whose place can only be India. We by nature are decentralized. We do not like authority in the sense how it works in a capitalist economy. We love to be independent. We love to be entrepreneurs. So that's my 2 pence. I would, yeah.
So let me go to the bankers. So he's sitting on my left. The Sumit is. So what is your take on the ONDC as a banker and Axis Bank, who has always been at the early movers in the technologies that comes? We have seen in the India stack, all the India stack, right? So where do you see from the banker, what are the opportunity that you have for a platform, the vast platform like ONDC, which will be much bigger than the UPIs, where it's only about a single transactions. So your take on this, and where do you see future in next 2 years?
Thank you. Firstly, thanks for having me, and thank you everyone for joining. So let me start by why are banks and why are we excited about ONDC? So reason number one is that India Stack in particular started, in large parts in the financial services space. So if you look at Aadhaar, which is used for KYC, or if you look at UPI, which is used for payments, or if you look at now account aggregator, which is used for information sharing, banks have tasted success, and we've seen how open, decentralized and public utilities can significantly impact consumer experience, business, and so on and so forth, right? So ONDC is for us one more component of the India Stack, which we believe can fundamentally change stuff for our consumers and our customers. So when it comes to banks, there are 3 angles from which banks get interested in ONDC. First is on the consumer side, which is, as an example, on Axis Bank, we have 11 million monthly active people who use our mobile app, and they come to our app 160 million times a month. So on average, the active customer comes to our app 15 times a month. The ONDC is a great way to surface offers for these people, right? So the turmeric farmer who is kind of trying to sell their product, our consumers can discover that on our app and place the order and kind of get it, right? So that is one side of it. What banks can do there obviously is surface these offers, but also to the financial services side of this. So as an example, the most simple one is the payments. If you have to buy something, you have to pay for it, so that we can facilitate. But also we can add on top of it credit. So can we, as an example, offer a loan to make a purchase, like a buy now pay later or a credit card or something of that nature. So that is the consumer side of this. One big benefit for us is the engagement, which is if these 11 million people are also coming to the app for the ONDC, maybe instead of coming 15 times a month, maybe they'll now come 25 times a month, and that kind of helps our engagement, right? And maybe that 11 million will become 20 million. So this is the consumer side. The second side is the merchant side. So we also have, obviously all merchants have a bank account, and so here's a very interesting fact, right? If you go and talk to all these small businesses, not large businesses, and if you talk to their owners and ask them which is the app that you use the most, you'll be surprised to know that it is a banking app, because they're always looking at payments coming in and going out, and they're trying to see if whatever product that they had sold, the money has come in or not. So they are spending a very large share of their time on their banking apps. So like the consumer will discover, the merchant can offer on the merchant side of the digital apps, and there again we can, on top of just the discovery and market access, we can provide all kind of financial services. So obviously payments is one, but the lending on the merchant side is a very, very interesting use case for banks, because historically, this is a fascinating statistic. If you look at any macro metric, GDP, employment, exports, small businesses contribute between 40 to 50%. But if you look at what is the share of credit that goes to small businesses in the banking industry, that's about 17-20%. So credit penetration lags their contribution to the economy. And the reason this happens is because it's very difficult to underwrite, and it's actually very costly to underwrite. You don't have information about the merchant, it's very difficult to reach them, and so on and so forth. But if the merchant is selling on ONDC, and you know that this guy is now sold whatever 100 units of something, so you have great ways to estimate their income, great ways to have transparency on how much cash flows they are having, and so on and so forth, and you can finance them very specifically for that purpose. So that's the second kind of side of where the banks come in. The third part where the banks come in is actually as a facilitating agent for the network itself. So one great example Rahul already mentioned is this the nodal-like accounts, right? And we obviously we are the first bank to set it up, but trust is a critical part. Like if you make a payment to a merchant who you don't know at all, you need to know that if something goes wrong, the money will come back, right? And you need to know that the money is safe and so on and so forth. And so in the financial transactions, hence we can introduce some like these type of accounts and so on and so forth, so that the money transfer is safe. We can provide payment gateway services and so on and so forth, which, or if say you are doing exports, then the money has to come back, so there has to be some kind of forex and remittance and so on and so forth. So that's the third angle where banks come in, which is supporting the network, and another area of very great interest to us. So we are very kind of excited about this. We are hopeful that the network grows, and as it grows, it creates benefits for consumers, it creates benefits for merchants, because the 40-50% margins kind of go to these guys. And as and when that happens, overall economy grows, transactions grow, banking business grows, and everybody gets benefited.
Thank you. So let me say a little bit about what do we do. So I represent ndhgo. So we are a SaaS platform that help businesses to get digitized. So when the ONDC started, so we have started a campaign where we decided that we'll be helping the small businesses to get them onboarded on the ONDC. So if we have been always seeing the Kirana store, right? The small grocery store near our home, right? Hardly anyone have a digital, billing system or inventory management system. Or everything is on their head. And do you know the number of SKU they have? Close to 2,000 to 5,000 SKUs they manage. So without any systems. And that was the biggest challenge for everyone who tried to get them digitized. Many have tried. Everyone has almost failed, and then they stopped that initiative. So we decided that we'd be taking them online and accessible to their society, and at large, if someone is want to sell across the country, they can do. And in this initiative, one of the biggest FMCG company is working very closely with us, where they are almost sponsoring the 100% of it. To get them, onboarded on ONDC, getting them the whole digitization. We have started that pilot from Bangalore, and we have a target to at least onboard 1 lakh retailers by end of this 2023. So that is a bit what we have been doing on the ONDC side. Other than this, like as a company, like we have been working. So my, the parent company, which is a fintech company, we have been working from 2011 on the India Stack. When it started with the Aadhaar in 2011, hardly any one of us were aware what is Aadhaar. So we are the people who was to work with the NPCI that was recently formed that time to connect the banks with the Aadhaar, so that the old age pension could be disbursed at the remotest place in the country. From there, my company started, and today we have onboarded almost 4.5 crore customers. Having bank account using Aadhaar, handling some $6 billion of transactions. So what I want to get that in the context is, when you started in the Aadhaar, right? So it has been just almost 10 years. So, and you can see the number of transactions that is happening on the India Stack. There are hardly 5 tech companies working in 2013. Who were working in the Aadhaar Tech or India Stack. But today in 2023, when the ONDC started, there will be 200 plus tech companies, 650 tech companies working on this. So I'm pretty sure it will not take 10 years or even 5 years, like UPI took almost 5 years to what UPI is today, right? I think we'll see the future in less than 2 years. So when you can understand that even though when the UPI started, there were some 10-20 companies in the tech space where they were helping the banks to get them onboarded in the UPI side. So there are 600 tech companies now working on the ONDC. So with this, my question to you, Rahul, is where do we see the future of e-commerce in India?
Okay. That's actually an interesting question, because I don't think of it as e-commerce. I think of it as digital commerce. Where I think of it is going is that so far we've actually put a boundary of what digital can do based on what the different platforms do on a physical world. Where I see it going is the physical world being enabled by an ONDC. Which means what? I mean, simplest way to look at it, right? At this point in time, when you go onto a platform, you pay 100% of the money upfront, but that money goes to the seller maybe 60 days later. But in the physical world, you do everything from saying, I will give you 10% for order confirmation, I will give you 50% on order dispatch, etc., right? Why can't that be done? And ONDC has been enabled for just that. Second thing that I want to leave you with today is that UPI made our lives easier, because that way we didn't have to really try and sell that idea too much. It's an interoperable, unbundled component, right? I'm going to date myself, but how many of you have used Hotmail? How many of you use Gmail? Yeah, the youngsters do. Right? So is it possible that a Gmail and an email that you send on Gmail will not get to Hotmail? No, it is not possible. You don't even conceive of that, right? That is interoperability. Is it possible that you can walk into one bank and use your credit card or your debit card and try and pull money from a different ATM? No, because interoperability and that unbundled nature has been part of the financial world for a long time. That is where I see digital commerce going, right? What we are doing in India from a commerce perspective is the first time in the world. Nobody had ever even thought of that. And that's why when I started today, I said, how many of you know about ONDC? But today, I'm hoping that all of you are going to go away and you will use my store or any of the applications which are on the ONDC website, and please place an order. See how it comes. Okay? One more thing I actually want to also bring out is that ONDC now allows you as a buyer or a buyer application or a seller application to do what you're doing best. Right? So far, what it used to be was everybody, because of the centralization component of it, everybody had to go find customers also, you had to go find sellers also, you had to literally create a platform by itself. But now the possibility of innovation and innovativeness comes out, because I could literally turn around and say, I will go and get all the sellers in Sarojini Nagar. Okay, I'm going to get them on the network. Or I will get all the Kanjivaram weavers in Kanchipuram onto the network. But now I don't have to worry about where the customer will come from, because the customer will come from anywhere. The customer could come through Axis Bank website, could be coming through IDFC Bank website. It could be coming from anywhere. So the discoverability, etc., is possible. Again, as I said, UPI made our life a little easier, but it also made it a little tougher, because, as I said, so UPI has it a little easier because they say they have an SKU. They have a stock keeping unit of one rupee that has to be moved. In our case, we have to look at millions of SKUs and the added complexity of cancellation, replacement, returns, refunds, etc. So we say millions of SKU plus one. The last thing I want to leave you with today is somebody had actually once said, if not us, then when? No, sorry, if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? So, as somebody said right now, right? The time has come. and India is it. And we will export this idea out too.
So, my question can be answered by anyone of sitting on my right or left, right? So, in a e-commerce or in any business, there is always a thought process of who come first, the buyer or the consumers, right? It's an egg and chicken story. So, how you see so as we have got people who are on the buyer side as well as on the seller side. So, how do you see this challenge, and what are the things you are doing to mitigate that challenge from the buyer and seller story, egg and chicken story?
So I'll take it from what Rahul, I think, partly answered that. See what happens when you're on open protocol. So like, what Rahul was alluding to when he said, let's say somebody has a skill set of acquiring all the retailers or the shop owners in Sarojini Nagar. That's his skill set, right? He acquires. Now if he's acquired, they're on the protocol. But now how does this guy see to it that there is a demand, or how do his consumers discover him? Now, because ONDC is present across the supply chain, right, from the buyer side to the seller side, he does not have to worry about that. Right, moment the retailer is on the protocol, then there will be buyer or consumer facing apps which could be present even in an Axis Bank app, right, or present in an IDFC Bank app or a Paytm or a MyStore, right. So the consumer will not go to that seller's platform; he will be going to an Axis Bank app, and the seller app which had acquired the Sarojini Nagar retailer is not even aware of that, where the order is pretty much coming. He's aware technically but doesn't have to care about it. So the order might come from a Paytm and this guy would get an order. So it's basically what it done is unbundled the whole opportunity. So there are no players who are controlling the entire e-commerce. They are following a protocol, and dependent on what the strength is, the buyer app strength is, well, I have all the buyers in South Delhi. So because I have all the buyers in South Delhi, now the guys will anyways discover that store from Sarojini Nagar is the nearest store to them, and they will buy from that. So ONDC has, in a way, I would say, blurred the boundaries of traditional way of doing e-commerce. Rahul, you want to add to that? Like, I'm sure you have a take there.
Are you saying I talk too much?
Yeah.
Okay. So as Sir had also alluded to a little earlier, right? Now, from a banking perspective also, I have an Axis Bank website where you have been going on so far, and you've just been buying financial products, or you're looking at, is my FD done? What is my account status? But from a banking perspective, I'm sorry, I'm jumping on this one, please. The way to look at it is that this allows the banks also to get a deeper relationship going with the customer. Because upfront I was only looking at saying what is my bank status like, etc. But now I can say I want to buy a refrigerator. Okay. Now, till now, again, the bank did not even know that they were buying a refrigerator till the time that transaction actually hit. And by that time, it was probably already too late. But now the bank says your history and says, okay, I see you as a valuable customer. How can I add value to you? How can I be part of your life? Rather than looking at you as a bank account number XYZ123, I am looking at you as an individual. I'm looking at you as Rahul Handa. Okay, that is where the banking side goes to. So from a seller perspective, now they're no longer turning around and saying, oh, you've come to me with a bunch of balance sheets, etc., but I don't believe you. Now you're seeing, as the seller application, you're able to say, here is an immutable, non-fudgeable risk record. I can actually look at all those transactions and say, yes, I trust you. Right? So that element of trust is an extremely, extremely important part to what we are doing. And that is what also ONDC as a whole does tend to garner.
Yeah. Okay. So my question to you, Mr. Kaur, is, as you have been working in the agri sector, so any specific things that you have so would help better to those small and marginal farmers?
So what I referred to earlier was basically about a farmer selling directly to a customer, a B2C. There is also this enormous scope of farmers. Not every farmer is going to get into secondary processing or value addition. Like they've packed their turmeric, they've done the processing, it's something which you can open and use. A lot of farmers are going to be selling bulk of their produce wholesale, whether graded or not graded, but bulk of it is going to go wholesale. The national agriculture market is an electronic platform which has been it's functional in 19 states because agriculture is a state subject and the APMC acts of the concerned state governments apply. But this year was the first year where electronically we traded on the eNAM platform 2 crores of apple from JNK to Jharkhand, because both these states realized that there's a potential for interstate trade and they freed up their other local mandi level licenses and fees and user charges which were there. So the first transaction which took place was a small one, 24,000, and we did the hand holding. We had the phone with the video mode on. Okay, this is the apple, this is the seller, this is the truck owner. So because eNAM requires that you make the payment the same day, it's only after receipt of the payment that the farmer dispatches the trucks. So with the first one which went to Dhanbad, there were these tentative, incremental gains, 1 lakh transaction, then 2 lakh, and the largest one which we did was 24 lakhs on a single day. And then we started getting calls from other mandis in Jharkhand. Jhumri Telaiya called up and said, we also want to buy apples. The wholesale price of apple in Azadpur Mandi did not fall below 120 this season. Jharkhand, it did not rise above 80 rupees. So that is the power to the consumer. That's the power of B2B. So we are hopeful of moving forward with B2B, with ONDC. The other things which were again from JNK, because it is one person has done it, the other states will do it because it works. They put up saffron for the first time, which is GI tagged, which is done by their directorate. They're very particular about the quality. We just put up 2 lots. We had not even lined up saffron buyers. The first one came from Jharkhand, and because they were looking at the apples, then they keep looking at what is JNK offering. The second one came from Rajasthan. This was last week. So there is change happening, and with these 2 states doing it, a third state in its budget session has actually moved an amendment to relax their local level levies for interstate trade. So we're hoping we can see more of this with ONDC in the agri sector. Thank you.
Okay. So because of time, I can say, so we have one last quote from everyone before we open it for the, people sitting here with any question they have. The last remark.
Sorry, question from myself. Last remarks, I think, again, re-quoting, I think this is the best time to join the bandwagon. I think the success of ONDC is a multi-stakeholder opportunity where starting from exporters to MSMEs to farmers to large aggregators, they should see merit in creating India's own stack. It's time to be self-reliant. And I think the theme of the event, reimagine. Let's reimagine how e-commerce could have been done or now can be done. And I think no better place than India again. This is our decade. That's been the theme. And why the decade? Let's make it our century. So, yeah.
So ONDC is extremely enabling. I don't know why they don't say it. Their tagline should be, we are enabling and we give you equitable opportunities.
Okay, so democratization of e-commerce, I think every country, not only in India, so every country, even countries like US who are so developed, have been talking of, democratization of e-commerce or the business. And I think globally, India is the only country who is not saying but doing it.
So, from my perspective, for India to grow and for India to grow in an equitable manner, we have to find ways to decentralize, democratize, and create public utilities. Right? So the inefficiencies go away, and instead of private profits, things become public goods, which help the consumers and the small merchants. ONDC is a fantastic way of achieving this. There are other areas where India has had great success in doing this, which is pushing the power to customers and to merchants instead of large institutions. And I think ONDC does that while not harming institutions in an unfair manner. And for that purpose, it's my hope and my kind of best wishes to Rahul and team that this becomes a huge success and it becomes the next, whatever UPI, whatever else you may want to call it, but it really democratizes and pushes power to consumers and small merchants.
But thank you so very much. I think this is one conversation that can go on for another hour and we won't have anyone complaining. And I think we have a spectacular audience and we obviously have some fantastic views thanks to our experts on the panel. So once again, a round of applause for all of them.